The mis- and disinformation bill is a threat to all of our freedoms. Let's talk about it. Unless you've been living under the proverbial rock, you will have heard about the Labor Party's Communications Legislation Amendment, Combating Misinformation and Disinformation Bill 2024, colloquially known as the Mis- and Disinformation Censorship Bill. Now, this bill has the power to censor what you can and you cannot say online should the government of the day and their bureaucrats decide that something is either mis- or disinformation. They will have considerable power to force companies, such as social media, to scrub that information from their platforms under threat of severe financial penalty.
Now, the Albanese government is attempting to push through a combating misinformation and disinformation bill that could be one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation to our free speech rights ever.
This bill, however, excludes, among others, mainstream legacy media. It also excludes academic institutions. So, La Trobe University, for example, could publish a document online describing terms like biological man and biological woman as harmful myths without sanction. But if you or I dared to say that gender theory was, in fact, a harmful myth, we could potentially have our comments erased and our social media account suspended. And no, I'm not joking, La Trobe University did actually publish this. This bill is, in my opinion, designed to silence the ordinary mum and dad, the ordinary person who might have a view which is contrary to the government's. To give the government of the day the power to censor what it deems as disinformation or misinformation is not only dangerous, but as history has shown, it is extremely unwise. We only need to look back at what happened during the COVID era, where much of what the government deemed to be misinformation at the time actually turned out to be true and correct. It's also important to understand that this bill was not originally a Labor Party idea. It was in fact originally a Liberal Party idea. This is a classic example of a duopoly at work, where citizens believe that they have a choice only to realise too late that choice is often an illusion designed to quell dissent. The Labor government is allowing just 1 week for the public to make submissions on this dystopian bill. If you ever needed proof that this government is interested only in suppressing the views of citizens, then this is it. To allow just 7 days for the Australian people to have their say on complicated legislation that will seriously impede all of our rights to speak freely is simply outrageous.
Dr. Joanna Howe is a professor at Adelaide Law School, and she joins me now. Dr. Howe, thank you so much for your time. In your expert opinion, is this bill necessary? And if it's passed, what impact will it have for Australians?
This bill is about giving the government more power, and essentially what this bill does is allows the government to decide what the truth is. So if you think about George Orwell's 1984 and that dystopia that he presented there was a Ministry of Truth. And essentially what the Albanese government is proposing is to create a Ministry of Truth, and the government will determine what is true. And if you don't comply with the dominant ideology of the establishment and their version of truth, then you will be shut down. So I am really concerned about this. This is the most dangerous law that I have seen in my time as a legal academic.
I urge everyone to prepare a submission and let the Albanese government know what we think of this authoritarian bill. This disgraceful legislation policing so-called misinformation and disinformation will undermine democracy as we know it. The answer to lies is not government censorship. The answer to lies is truth. So let people speak freely and let the truth rise to the top. Are we really so naive as to believe the government's claim that the freedom to express ourselves is in and of itself a threat to freedom? Freedom of thought and freedom of speech are not a threat to anyone. Rather, it is the overreach of an increasingly desperate government anxious to regulate and control how we express ourselves that is the true danger. This Orwellian legislation must be resisted, and I urge you to join me in doing so by doing 3 things. First, lodge a submission via the link provided. Second, if you haven't already done so, sign my petition. Third, share this video with your family and friends, either by sharing this link via SMS, forwarding the email, or sharing to your personal social media. This is, after all, an information war, so we must get the information out there. We all need to work together if we have any hope of stopping this disastrous bill. I'm Senator Bett for the United Australia Party.